Following the release of both Lucia and Yidhari as some of the most valuable agents in their game, version 2.4 is definitely not stepping off the gas considering the incredible value both featured agents hold. With Banyue releasing in the second phase, it was bound for him to be a fantastic DPS from the moment he was confirmed to be a Rupture unit. So of course that's alongside the fact he is a male character, which is pretty rare itself. It likely means a lot of players are still interested in Banyue and the value he holds as a Rupture DPS. So with that said, and due to having early access, I'll be breaking down his full kit, going over some team synergies you may want to consider, viable W engines, disk drive sets that can be utilized, then I'll be wrapping it up with his overall value and whether Banyue is a character you should consider for your account. As always, if you are interested in more ZenlessZoneZero content, would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe and drop a like if you enjoyed the video. But just before you do jump in, if you are possibly after some additional monochromes to prepare for some of the upcoming banners, then you may want to check out this sponsor. Lootbar is a reliable and secure top-up platform that allows you to pick up game currency for an even lower price than in-game. Such as with ZenlessZoneZero, you are able to pick up selected items with up to 23% off. So if you are thinking about picking up some polychromes or even simply just renewing your Internet membership, then you may as well pick it up using Lootbar to save some money. All you need to do is head to the website and click on whichever pack you would like to pick up, then fill out your game account UID and server region, choose your preferred payment method, and in a couple of minutes you will receive your polychromes. Also, as usual, the double top-up bonus will be provided even when going through Lootbar, so you aren't missing out. Lastly, as of now, new users are eligible for a 10% off coupon along with a bunch of other coupons for an extra discount. So again, if you are looking for a quick and safer way to pick up discounted game currency than other websites, be sure to check out Lootbar through the link in the description. Diving into this with the fact Banyue once again is our newest Rupture DPS, which immediately means he is going to have an edge over most DPS characters since he will be able to completely ignore defense. So with that, alongside his impressive base damage multipliers, Banyue is going to be a DPS many might consider simply due to his DPS potential. Now in regards to his kit and abilities, Banyue is essentially a combo monster that is able to chain various basic attacks and special attacks at the cost of adrenaline, leading to significant damage being dealt. For instance, the EX special attack Mountain Tremor and Earthshaker are both able to be activated after dealing a certain number of basic attacks or hits from the standard special attack. But alongside that, you can also activate those EX special attacks through other ways such as following up after a chain attack, dodge counter, or the ultimate. So pretty much Banyue is going to have an extremely high skill ceiling, considering there will be numerous ways to pull off certain combos and with there being a total of 6 EX special attacks that can be activated, which means the more you know, the more DPS you will be capable of dealing and the better his performance. In addition, Banyue does have a gauge mechanic that allows him to accumulate a max of 150 stacks of Wrathful Fires. Once reaching a minimum of 120 stacks through various abilities such as triggering a defensive assist, parrying an attack, or when simply consuming adrenaline, Banyue can then enter the Visage of Wrath state through activating the basic attack Immolate. Although there is another way to enter the secondary state, and that would be through the basic attack Inflame, which is triggered when Banyue isn't in combat and if he specifically has more than 50% HP alongside 120 Wrathful Flames. He then consumes HP to reach 120 stacks of Wrathful Flames and then immediately enters the Visage of Wrath state. So with that ability, it will allow Banyue to switch back onto the field already within his secondary state, allowing him to deal as much damage as possible instantly and grants access to his enhanced set of abilities. As for those enhanced abilities, the basic attack Toppling Mountain will be available and is pretty much the finishing move for his combos, considering it will consume 120 stacks of Wrathful Flames to deal a massive amount of damage and leads to Banyue exiting the secondary state. However, there is another variation of this ability known as Basic Attack Crushing Peaks, which can be activated once performing 2 different EX special attacks for Banyue to then launch his prayer beads at enemies and then finishes off with the basic attack Toppling Mountain automatically. Now interestingly enough, Banyue will have a special cancel mechanic within each of his abilities, which allows for EX special attacks to interrupt the current EX special attack if you do activate it at the precise moment where a red little flash appears. If you do manage to trigger the next ability within that short window, you can keep chaining abilities at an even quicker rate to ultimately deal more DPS. So this mechanic does certainly add to the skill ceiling within Banyue's kit, which makes him more of an interesting and rewarding character to play with if you do know his combos, but of course for some will be much more difficult to use at max potential. Now it's also worth mentioning the dodge counters, since they can also be chained with Banyue's EX special attacks. But there is also the immovable mountain ability that allows him to enter a defensive stance for a short duration and parries the enemy's attack, which is going to be great for Banyue since you would still be able to parry attacks whilst keeping him on field to continue his combos. With the ultimate in specific, as you might expect, it will be one hell of an ability that deals a ton of damage. But along with that, it will allow Banyue to enter the Visage of Wrath states if he has more than 120 stacks of Wrathful Flames. That, alongside a chain attack having the exact same effect, it will allow Banyue to enter the secondary state sooner and to deal more DPS overall. On the note of dealing more DPS, just finishing up with the fact the core passive also allows Banyue to gain 4 stacks of Mountain's Might upon entering the Visage of Wrath state. Each stack of Mountain's Might will be consumed when triggering one of the EX special attacks instead of Adrenaline, whilst also providing additional Adrenaline, which is of course going to be quite useful in enabling Banyue to trigger EX special attacks more often and to chain more attacks. Additionally, there will be a bonus of 300 sheer force when triggering EX special attacks or follow-up attacks, alongside a 40% fire damage bonus and a 40% crit damage bonus lasting for 30 seconds. But considering how often EX special attacks are going to be triggered, it means these buffs should be up for majority of the battle. Then the cherry on top would be the additional ability providing a max of 15% additional fire damage when consuming stacks of Mountain's Might, allowing for even more damage to be dealt and for Banyue to be even more reliable as the main DPS for his team. Now, as for team compositions and Banyue's versatility, from the fact that he's a Rupture DPS that chains a lot of abilities, he will likely want to be utilized more as a hyper carry and alongside those that would obviously be a bit more tailored towards supporting Rupture agents. So immediately, the best composition on release is going to be Banyue himself as the main DPS alongside Dialin as the stun agent and Lucia as the support. Dialin in specific is more or less the best stun agent in their game when considering the buffs she provides, such as a stun damage multiplier and duration increase, a general damage bonus for the team, and the ability to enable allies to switch onto the field using their ultimates, but also is capable of dealing great damage herself for a stun agent, and especially when alongside attackers or Rupture characters that activate her additional ability. Of course, with the fact that she is featured in the same version as Banyue and with both characters being just before version 2.5, it might be a bit difficult to acquire both characters, and so in that case you could use a few different alternatives, such as Jufufu and Trigger, which both offer great universal value to help increase Banyue's DPS. As for Lucia, it should be obvious that she would be the best support option considering she is tailored for Rupture agents, given she does increase max HP alongside healing and providing various damage bonuses including a sheer force bonus. So just like with other Rupture agents, Lucia is going to be the best in slot support. But again, there are some alternatives just in case you don't have her, such as AstraYao, Panyanhu or Caesar, given each of them do provide value towards Banyue's DPS alongside additional sustainability. It's also worth mentioning you could use 2 support alongside Banyue if you don't have any universal stun options, since the team still aims to buff Banyue as much as possible and will rely on him as a hyper carry. So in summary, Banyue's versatility is pretty solid and does have a few different variations for compositions, which is more or less the same situation as Yi Zhuan, given she is also another Rupture combo damage dealer. So if anything, you will definitely be prepared for Banyue's release if you already have agents that do synergize with Yi Zhuan, essentially agents that will take up hardly any field time to allow Banyue to just focus on his combos and deal tons of damage. As for the W engines that Banyue would utilize, before anything, of course his own signature is going to be the best option considering it will provide tailored effects that buff his DPS more than any other W engine. So considering he is a Rupture DPS and will likely be amongst the best DPS characters, if you are going to rely on him to clear endgame content for you, then it would probably be best to consider his signature. However, if you just aren't able to pick it up for whatever reason, then there are going to be some alternative options, such as either the Kraken's Cradle or Qingyi Birdcage, which are the only two S-rank Rupture W engines in their game. Now they both do provide tailored effects for their dedicated agents, but at the very least Banyue will benefit from the HP bonus via the main stats and from the crit bonuses each passive provides. Yet Haru's W engine is obviously going to be a bit more restrictive since the crit bonus is under the effect Banyue's HP needs to fall to 50%, which is achievable since his basic attack in Flame will consume his HP and lower it to 50% at max in order to throw him into the secondary state. But with Yuzuha's W engine, the crit bonus is unconditional and so just means it will be much more consistent. Aside from those two, there is going to be the Gorilla Wisp, which is in fact perfect for Banyue considering it increases fire damage and crit rate through the passive alongside providing a HP bonus through the main stat. So with this especially being an A-rank W engine, it means all players will have access to it, leading to Banyue performing quite well even if you don't have his signature. There are a few other A-rank W engines such as the Radio Wave Journey and Puzzle Sphere that can work pretty well, but given how great the Gorilla Wisp is, you should probably stick to that over any other A-ranked W engine. Finishing up with the disk drive builds, pretty much the same case as any other Rupture damage dealer, Banyue will want to utilize the Yunkui Tails as the 4-piece set, given it increases HP through the 2-piece effect alongside crit rate and sheer damage through the 4-piece effect. So there really is no question regarding the 4-piece disk drive set. But as for the 2-piece set, there will be a few different options you can use. The Woodpecker Electro set and Branch and Blade Song set are pretty much the only two sets you would want to utilize, given they can increase either crit rate by 8% or crit damage by 16%. So if you are lacking in crit rate, then the Woodpecker Electro set will obviously be the best choice. But if you stacked enough crit rate, then the Branch and Blade Song is going to maximize Banyue's damage. Now in terms of the stats you should prioritize, on the 4th disk drive you would want as usual either crit rate or crit damage. The 5th disk drive would want fire damage bonus, but HP percent will be an alternative option, and the final disk drive will definitely want HP percent. As for the substats, crit rates, crit damage, HP percent and either attack percent or flat HP will be the stats you will want the most. Overall, Banyue is definitely going to be an incredible DPS given his DPS potential and his abilities to buff his own damage by quite a bit. Also, as mentioned, from the moment he was confirmed as a Rupture DPS, it should have been obvious that he would be a fantastic DPS that will contend to be amongst the best. However, there is a major factor to consider, which is going to be his skill ceiling, given there is a lot to know and remember regarding what abilities can chain together and specifically if you are able to perfect cancel at the right moment. Of course, if you're able to, then Banyue does end up having one of the most satisfying playstyles, since you are rewarded massively based on your own skill and ability to play with this character. So with that said, Banyue might just end up as the strongest Rupture DPS if you're able to use him at max potential, which means for those that aren't really looking to maximize his playstyle, he wouldn't really be as great. Above all, he is going to be a solid DPS, but with the fact Guang is releasing in the very next version update, it means if you do want a DPS that likely holds the most longevity and will certainly be amongst the best for a while, then it would be best to just focus on Guang in version 2.5. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe for more ZenlessZoneZero content, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Also, drop a comment down below on whether you will be pulling for Banyue or will you be skipping. And yeah, I hope to catch you guys later.